Hello and welcome. Today we are going to take a look at some of my favorite currently available Dior makeup items to create a summer look. And these are some items that, we've got a couple new things, but there are also things that are in the permanent line that I feel like they're just underrated and people kind of forget about them or they don't really talk about them very much. So we're going to take a look at those and create, just like an easy summer look. And then I also want to share with you some of the items I recently picked up from Idyl during their seasonal sale. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to do a Dior summer look. First, I'm going to start by clipping back my hair. Personally, I really love these clips because you can see we've got the double prong here, so they hold my hair securely. I have fine hair, so it can easily slip through barrettes, but it also doesn't crease. So sometimes when I'm filming, my hair is still slightly damp and a regular barrette does add the creasing. So these work really well. So I'll leave them linked down below. I think they're like Skin by Ella, but they are really nice clips. So those have been my go-to clips. But I figured, let's go ahead and take a look at some forgotten favorites from Dior. I recently reviewed the Dior Backstage collection and there were it's just so it wasn't the best collection in my opinion. And I feel like Dior's had some hits and some misses so far this year. Unfortunately, some of the items were limited edition, like the Sweet Bouquet palette, which was one of my favorites. I really love that one. But I figured let's go ahead and take a look at some items that are available from Dior that are perfect for summer every day. So we're going to start off with base products. So for primer, I'm actually just going to put on another layer of sunscreen today, and this is the Supergoop Unseen Sunscreen. So I will use this just as straight up daily sunscreen, or it has a silicone texture, so I'll also use this as a makeup primer. So one of the great things about this being able to be used as a makeup primer is I can put it all over my neck, my face, whatever, and it's still just sunscreen without a tint. I don't get any like makeup on my clothes or anything like that. So this is one that I've actually been using for ever since it first came out, so way before I started a YouTube channel, and it's just a product that I always go back to. So let's move on to some of my favorite Dior base products. So I always keep a microfiber cloth in my lap, to wipe off my brushes in between. And I did have some requests to see how this brush, which is the new Koh Gen Do by SUQQU 5-sided large face brush. I had some requests to see this with liquid. So in my previous video, I talked about this brush and I mentioned how I'm going to use mine specifically for powders. And it I made it basically sound like you can only use it for powders, and that's incorrect. You can use this for liquids. It is a high-grade Psycho goat hair, so it can be used for liquids, creams, and powders, but it does have the persimmon dye. And personally for me, with things with the persimmon dye, persimmon dye is a plant-based dye. Over a long period of time or a lot of use, the dye can fade a little bit. And I try to keep my brushes very pristine because these are, I consider them like heirlooms to pass on to my daughters when they get older. And so I am going to be using mine specifically with powders to keep that dye as pristine as possible. But it can definitely be used with liquids and creams. So we're going to use it today with some of the Dior stick products. So we're going to start off with the contour, or the bronzer stick, or skin contour stick, sorry. It's number 1 light. That's what I use. So I like to put this on under the foundation. I'm going to bring you in closer. So I'm actually going to take the small version of this brush and apply the contour with this. So just getting some on the brush and just kind of stamping it in here a little bit. And let's do this on the other side. So I just wiped off the brush. I like to put this on underneath and then just kind of leave it a little bit darker, because with my lighter skin tone, sometimes I feel like contour shades can still be pretty evident even after blending, just because of the colors. So I'm gonna do a soft blend here, but still leave it pretty prominent because we're going to go ahead and put the foundation on top. And again, this is the Dior contour stick in number 1 light, and I used the small 5-sided brush for that. But moving on to the foundation, This is my favorite stick foundation at the moment. I use this quite a bit. So this is shade 0N, and I'm going to go ahead and use the large brush for this. So I'm going to get some here on the brush fibers. I'm going to just work it into the brush a little bit by putting it on the back of my hand. You could also apply the stick directly to your hand and then use the brush to just kind of spread it out. But I want to go in with a lighter application here. Let's work that in a little bit more. And here we go here. So you can see it gives a nice, soft, airy finish on the skin. The brush is incredibly soft to work with. And honestly, this is so soft. You know, using it like this is actually making me want to buy a second one. And so I have one specifically for liquid and cream products. So we'll have to see. This is a really nice brush. Oh, and they ended up being gifted to me. I had purchased them at first, but Bobo from Fude Bobo was kind enough to send them to me in PR. So these were gifted brushes, but I was purchasing them myself. And yeah, they're just really nice. So let me back you out so you can see the effect, but you can see, how nicely the foundation applies with the brush. All right, so here is the foundation. You can see the contour still there, but using the foundation on top just makes it look a little bit more like a natural shadow. And I mean, I'm just doing this so you can see how the brush bends and feels on the skin. Wow, it is so nice. So this also will perform just as nicely with a liquid versus a cream, but creams can be a little bit more difficult. Sometimes you want a stiffer brush to apply them, and this brush, it's really kind of the best of both worlds. You've got density in it, you've also got airy lightness. So because of that, it works well with all of the products. So I thought we would go ahead and take a look at the Dior blush stick in Rosewood. So I just recently reviewed these last month, and I feel like overall the new Dior backstage stuff was kind of hit or miss, and a lot of them do have kind of a very warm golden orangey undertone to them. The cooler shades have a slightly different undertone. The Rosewood here is a cooler shade. Let me wipe off my hand here, and then let's swatch this. But the Rosewood was my favorite of the ones I tried out. And I think it's a really nice cream blush stick. It doesn't 100% sit down, but I do like this one. So I thought we would go ahead and try this because honestly, the Dior blushes overall, I don't really love any of their blushes. Their powder blushes have been, they're really hit or miss. Some shades are very patchy, or, the formula hard pans pretty quickly. So I haven't been loving those since they reformulated the Dior Rouge blushes. The backstage, I actually prefer the finish of the previous ones. The new formula is nice. The colors with the new pH flip, I'm not loving them. So, I think for blushes, this blush stick is probably my favorite of the Dior blushes they have. Now, it does have a pretty strong fragrance to it, and it does fade while you're wearing it. But this Rosewood shade, you can see, is a really beautiful, it's not really a true rosewood. It's really more of a medium pink, more of a rose and carnation pink mixed together. And this one has a little bit more of a cooler undertone to it without any sort of egregious color flip to it. So let's go ahead and apply this. I'm going to bring you in closer. All right, so for this, I'm actually going to put this on the back of my hand, get a nice swatch here, and I'm going to use the same brush I used for foundation. So again, it's the 5-sided, and I'm just kind of wiping off the bristles first, so I don't have any excess foundation in it, and I just want to get a light wash of color here. If I wanted to go in with a little bit more color, I would either go with the small brush to get a more concentrated swatch, or add the blush stick directly to the cheeks first. But I just want a very soft wash. Again, when you go in more strongly with this blush stick, it really doesn't fully sit down, and so because of that, if I use less product, you know, I'm going to have less movement of the product, and it won't have as much of that like tacky or wet texture on my skin. So not that it's like terrible or anything. It's not like a super strong tacky finish to it. It actually is very nice. I would say it sits down most of the way, 90% or so. But I plan on setting this with a little bit of powder and adding one of the Dior highlighters, which I have to say, the new Dior highlighters, those are some of my favorite highlighters. I think they did a great job with those. So this is the Rosewood Blush Stick applied very softly. Let me back you up. So you can see you can really get this natural flush. It's got this glowy sheen to it. When you use more product, these have more of an intense glow or sheen to them. You really don't need any additional highlighter with this. However, I want to make this a little bit more matte, so I'm going to set everything with powder. So I'm going to take the YSL loose powder, and this is the blue one. So I've been using this a lot. So I wiped off this brush, and I made sure there's no like tacky moisture or anything on it so that I can apply the powder smoothly. Just gonna kind of tap this off. I'm gonna bring you in so you can see how the powder applies. All right, so you can see we've got powder on here, and we kind of tapped off the excess, and I'm just kind of blotting this on first just to make sure I don't remove any of the products already on my skin. And now I'm doing more of a light finishing brush movement. And look at the way that it looks now compared to no powder. So we still have that glow, that sheen that's showing up through the powder, but I just feel like it looks just slightly more mattified. Let me back you up. So you can see the difference with the powder versus no powder, and yet, you know, everything applied very smoothly, very nicely. There are no like powder lines on the skin. Nothing has like stuck to any of the products or moisture on my skin. So everything still looks very smooth, but it creates this veil. And I think the YSL loose powders have been, they've been one of my go-tos, particularly this blue one, because I feel like, you know, a lot of makeup is pretty warm tone, and the blue really just kind of helps tone that down a little bit, which works well for my skin tone. So as for loose powders, the ones I use the most would be this YSL in blue, as well as the SUQQU loose powder. Those have been my go-tos. So I absolutely love them for loose powder, and I think it just gives this really nice veil type finish to the skin. And let's add some highlight. All right, so today we're going to use the Dior Forever Glow Luminizer in number 4 Pink Strobe. But I have to say my favorite and most used shade is actually Pink Halo. So I'm going to swatch that one as well. But you can see Pink Strobe here is going to be, it's a little bit more of a darker pink. We've got a little bit of a golden flip. And the reason I'm going with this one instead of my typical Pink Halo, which is a beautiful champagne pink. It's going to be cooler in tone. You can see the finishes are very different. We have a metallic flip, whereas this is just going to be more of your straight up traditional, more metallic shimmery highlighter. The reason I'm going with this one instead, the Pink Strobe, is because of the eye colors that I decided to use today. And so I wanted to kind of tie them in a little bit. So I'm going to take this brush here, and you can see this is one of the new Kyoto brushes from a set, and I am, you know, still working on that video for these, but I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of roll this in here and tap off the excess, and then just kind of very softly glaze here. And you can see that this actually works very nicely as a blush lighter as well. So if I wanted to use this all over, perform very well. But I just want a very soft bit of highlighter here, so not too much. And I have to say, these Dior highlighters, they have become some of my favorite powder highlighters. So this is what it looks like with the Pink Strobe on top. And again, this one here is Pink Strobe versus Pink Halo. And this brush, it's a great brush. I'll have this in a video relatively soon. Let's go ahead. We're going to move on to the eyes. So I'm starting off with the Trish McAvoy eye primer in the shade Demure, and just going to add a little bit of this. And then I'm using the SUQQU soft concealer brush to just kind of put on the eye primer. I like to use a brush with it. It makes it a little bit lighter, as in a softer application, and it's soft on my skin. I don't end up with too much product, and I can really apply this nicely everywhere. Oftentimes I'll just use whatever concealer brush I used, but I'm not wearing concealer today. So that is it for the primer. And then I wanted to go in with the Dior singles because I feel like these are always forgotten. Nobody really talks about them after they come out. It seems like then they disappear. So this first shade here is number 658. This is Beige Mitza, which is a metallic. It is a really beautiful soft brown. There's a little bit, you can see when it's built up, you see a little bit of silver. So it's almost a taupe. And then this here is 755 Rose Tulle. Again, it's a metallic. Online, the photos for this one make it look a lot cooler than it is, but it's actually going to be a warm coppery rose. And I like to mix these together, but they are a little warm for what I want today. So I'm taking 045 Celestial Gray, which is a glitter shade, and I'm going to mix this with them. So let's go ahead and test these out. So I'm going to take this brush here. This is a Smith 235, and you can see that it's kind of in between a shader style and a crease brush, and we have more of that arrowhead shape. So I'm going to use this as for my base, which is going to be the Beige Mitza shade here. So just going to pick up some of that product here, and I'm going to kind of put this all over and buff that into the crease. I'm just wiping off some excess on the brush there. And now that the brush is clean, just kind of blending that up a little bit. Next, I'm taking this small brush here. This is from SUQQU. This is part of their artist series. Ihodo also makes the same brushes in a long black handle. This is going to be your short red handle. And this is 30-4. We're going to go in with the Rose Tulle here, and just going to go ahead and put this on the inner half of the eye here. And you can see it blends very nicely with the Beige Mitza, and it just gives a little bit of a slightly different color interest here. So that's it. I feel like the Rose Tulle has a little bit more of a metallic sheen to it than the Beige Mitza does. All right, next we're going in with the glitter. I'm going to use the same brush here. And again, this is 45 Celestial Gray. And we're going to start off in the corner here. And we're going to do that. And then I'm going to go back in with this Smith 235. And I'm just going to get a little bit of, just like a light dusting here and kind of go over the top. So I get kind of that cooler look mixed with the tones of the Beige Mitza and the Rose Tulle. All right, so you can see that sometimes the way the light hits it, it'll have that warmer Beige Mitza Rose Tulle look. And other times when the light shifts, you see more of that silver gray. So, not as much as like a true duochrome or anything like that, but it's kind of like a makeshift duochrome. Now for eyeliner, I love this shade from Dior. This is Matte Taupe, and it's really not taupe. It is more of a purple shade here. These will set fairly quickly. You can see how quickly, it's actually on its way, but I think it's a really great shade here. So we're going to use this on the upper lash line. Now, I don't want a ton of products. I'm actually taking the Smudger 2 from SUQQU, and I'm going to apply my eyeliner using the brush. All right, and then I'm just going to kind of put this kind of softly by the upper lash line. And again, I don't want anything too deep, so that's why I'm using the brush. I want more of a thinner line, but softly applied. Then taking whatever's left on the brush here and just going halfway under the eye. And that's it. You can see it's just adding a little bit of color. All right, so that's it for the eyes. I'm going to curl my lashes and add some mascara. I don't have a Dior mascara right now, so let's go in with one of my current favorites. So I'm going to take the Lancome Flutter Lash Extension Mascara, and I really like this one. We've got this nice mini brush here. It really adds some length. It gives you those fluttery lashes without, you know, any major like clumps or anything, and it just makes them look so much longer overall. They really accentuate the lashes well. All right, so that's the mascara. For brows, I want something easy, so taking the SUQQU Coloring Eyebrow Gel in number 2 Sand. This is, you know, one of my go-to products. It has replaced the Tom Ford Fiber Brow Gel for me, which is like impossible to get now. But I love the SUQQU one, and it's just nice and light and easy to use. So these are the finished eyes. And again, these are the shades we used. This is the matte taupe eyeliner. We've got the beige Misa Rose Tool and Celestial Gray eyeshadows, which are singles. I think these make a really beautiful palette. Actually, the palette colors here remind me a little bit of that Chanel palette. This one here, which is 328 Peru Crystal. This was one of the limited edition palettes that came out a few years ago. So let me just go ahead and swatch these shades. But you can see it's going to be kind of a similar color story here. And I didn't realize that until just now. The big thing is this blue is very light and sheer. But yeah, you know, this is kind of similar to the Rose Tool. This brown, it's warmer, but it's, or not necessarily warmer, but it doesn't have the silver flip, yet the actual base itself is cooler, if that makes sense. So the undertones, or the base of this is kind of like a warmer brown, but we have a little bit of like a silvery gray mixed in there. And this is going to be a cooler brown base, but you can see overall it's a pretty similar color story to that. Pretty interesting how that worked out. So this is what we have so far, and then we're going to go in with some of my favorite Dior lip products. First, I'm taking the Makeup by Mario lip pencil, and this is in the shade Pink Peony. So I'm just putting a light coating of Pink Peony around the edges, and I love this particular shade because it matches perfectly to one of my favorite Dior lipsticks, which we are applying now, and that's the Dior, this is the Rouge Forever version, but this shade is available in other finishes. I also love the satin version. The colors are going to be slightly different between the finishes, which, you know, is because the finish changes. So, but this is 670 Rose Blues, and I love this shade, and it matches beautifully with this lip liner. Now the Dior Rouge Forever lipsticks, again, this is a product that I feel like is underrated. They haven't really been talked about that much since they came out a couple of years ago, but they, I think, are a really great long wearing lipstick. So, you know, these will really last on me all day, yet they are a lipstick. So, you know, I wouldn't say it's 100% transfer proof for a while. As you can see, I blotted off the excess of the lipstick, but these really do like kind of stain the lips, last all day, and you know, I think they're a fantastic formula. But I wanted something a little bit lighter for summer, and I wanted to add a little bit of lilac to it. So I decided to add the Dior Addict Lip Glow Butter in 102 Glaze Lavender. Now, I didn't want to make a mess on my lips with the applicator, so I put it on my finger and I applied it directly that way. So you can see that applying the Glaze Lavender, it adds a little bit of a bluer lavender kind of flip when the light hits it a certain way, and it takes the lipstick and just makes it a little bit fresher looking for spring summer compared to, you know, more of the stronger matte look that we have directly with the Rouge Forever. So let me go ahead and swatch those lip products for you. Now the Makeup by Mario, we have a brush on one end. And again, this is going to be the lip pencil in Pink Peony. And I think it's a really beautiful shade. But again, the reason I love it is because it is such a great match to the Rose Blues. And again, in the Rouge Forever version, it's number 670. But the satin version does have a slightly different number. You know, my mistake, I keep saying the satin version, and I'm not actually sure. I have to look to see if it comes in satin. This is the velvet version in the Dior. These are their Rouge Dior lipsticks. So this is the velvet, and you can see it's slightly warmer. It's actually a little bit closer to the Mita lipstick. All right, and taking out the clips, you can see no creasing in the hair. And this is our finished look. And I did want to take a minute. This portion of the video is sponsored. We are going to just take a quick look at some of the pieces of Idyl jewelry that I personally just purchased during their most recent sale. So I picked up these earrings, which are called the jade earrings, and I really love, they become like kind of like a go-to for me. But let me show you, you know, we've got the diamond studs. So you can buy these from Idyl, but you can also use any studs that you have. I sometimes like to mix them with like other gemstones like topazes and so forth. And then you have this piece here that has, you know, you can see we've got the diamond here, but then we have the little holes. You can make this as tight as you want or as loose. That actually allows you to be able to turn it to different locations as well. So let's say you're putting this on a different part of the ear, or perhaps you want it, like I wear mine straight down, but you could put it out to the side and so forth. So you take the stud, you put that in first, and then you just slip the other portion, the jade portion, down on it. So depending on what hole you use, you can either, you know, scrunch that in a bit more or make it a little looser. This is the last hole. This is the second hole. So you can kind of see the difference between the two. And then I also purchased the Charlie choker. And I like to pair this with some other, you know, necklaces and stuff often, but you may have seen me wearing these pieces in other videos already. It's just a nice, you know, diamond choker. We've got a couple different lengths. There are 3 different holes that you can put the necklace on. So you can make it, if I put it on the shortest hole, it's about this tight on me. This is the second. And then the third it's right about here. So, you know, as I'm talking, I'm just kind of showing you other pieces I have in my collection. Talked about these in previous videos in the past, but I did want to just kind of share an update on some items I recently purchased. And the reason I really like these products is because they're so easy to configure and personalize with your own personal style. You know, I love being able to, first of all, I love the way these earrings look, but a lot of these pieces you can see here in this side footage, you know, I can put, for example, this long Billy chain earring. I can wear those as earrings, or I can put it on a necklace and wear it as a pendant necklace. You know, we've got that interchangeability there. They do come in different types of gold. I chose the white gold personally, and I just love how I can mix and match all of these pieces, and it's more modular jewelry. And I really like the fact that these are lab created diamonds, and it's also a family focused brand. So, you know, Ornella, the founder of this, it's a 90% female powered brand, but she works with her brother and her mom and her dad. And I love the whole story behind it. And I personally, I really appreciate the pieces that I've purchased and the pieces that I have been gifted from this brand. So I just wanted to share a little bit about them because, you know, I love jewelry and I love being able to reuse the pieces I already have and mix and match them to get some new looks. And I love the fact that although this is a modular brand and we've got, you know, different pieces that we can add to change the earring looks or the necklace looks and so forth, I don't have to use their studs. I can use pearls. I can use studs I already have. You know, I love the fact that it's not like, for example, some of these refillable lipsticks where you have to buy their case. So I love the fact that we have true modularity here, and, you know, they are easily compatible with a variety of other options. So thank you so much to Idyl for sponsoring this portion of the video. And let's move back to the Dior and take a look at the products we use today. All right, so let's go ahead. We're just gonna swatch everything and talk about it again. We start off with the light contour shade, and this is shade number 1. And It's really more of a brownish contour. You know, I think it would be more of a true contour for me if it had a little bit more gray in it, which is another reason I like to pair it underneath. But this is the contour stick that I reach for most often. I do not contour on a regular basis, however, but I love the creaminess of this. I love how it applies to the skin and stays put. The foundation stick, however, is one of my go-to foundations. I use this a ton. This is shade 0N. Now, you can go in a little heavy with this at times, so I do typically like to mix the foundation the way I did today, where I kind of, you know, wiped any excess off on my hand beforehand and kind of prime the brush with the foundation so I get a lighter layer. That's my favorite way to use it, but it also works really nicely for, you know, patting under the eyes as concealer and so forth. And when I'm traveling, you know, I've taken a few weekend trips with the kids over the past, you know, 5-6 months, and this is the foundation I take with me. So I love the fact that it's in a stick. It's super easy to use. So then from there, we went into the YSL blue powder, which I personally, I love that powder. It's light, it's airy. It, you know, doesn't look cakey at all on the skin, and it kind of gives this light bluey, you know, more of a velvety finish to the skin, but it's light and airy, so it looks natural. So personally love those. Oh, and before that, we actually added the Dior blush stick in Rosewood. So this is the new Backstage blush stick. And again, it doesn't 100% sit down if you use a lot of product, which is why I wanted to set this with the powder. But this is going to be one of the cooler tone options from here. And out of the 3 blush sticks I picked up, this one's my favorite, and it's going to be one that I use a lot throughout the summer. And I think it's a really pretty shade, and there's no major like color flip. It is fragrance though. All of the Dior products are, but I feel like the blush stick is a little bit stronger than the foundation and contour stick. However, I have had those for, you know, many months longer than the blush stick, so perhaps it's just that it's newer. And then we moved into the highlight, and I used the pink strobe highlight, which has a bit of a color flip to it. And this added a little bit of warmth back into the blush because I wanted to pair it with the eyeshadows. So I did use my Trish McEvoy eye primer in Demure, which does kind of help camouflage any like veins or anything on my eyes, and acts as like a nice primer to really make that color pop a little bit more. And then we moved in with some of my favorite mono eyeshadows from Dior. So we have 658 Beige Mitza, which is a really nice soft brown, but there is a little bit of a silvery hue to it when you pile that up. So, you know, I have to say though, you know, the Beige Mitza, we've had several different versions. The original was Cosmopolite many years back. It has progressively gotten a little bit warmer with each new version of it. So just something to know, if you have the original Cosmopolite, that was slightly cooler than the Beige Mitza we have now. Even the previous Beige Mitza was slightly cooler. Almost not, it's like barely noticeable at all though. Slightly cooler though than this one. And this is Rose Tool. Again, these shades, they all look cooler online on the Dior photos than they do in person. And this one here is the glitter formula in Celestial Gray, number 45. So these are the 3 that we used. And then I used the Dior eyeliner in Matte Taupe, which is really a purple. It's more of a matte, you know, almost an eggplant purple. And it's number 771. So I think that's a really great shade. It's one of my favorite eyeliners. I think they did a nice job when they reformulated these. They're creamy, they set, and you know, I haven't had any issues. The previous version, they would break off, dry out very quickly, but I've had these since they first came out, and they're still nice and creamy and easy to use. I have had no breakage on any of my shades, and I have to say I use this one in particular all the time. For mascara, we used the Lancome Lash Idyl Flutter Extension, which I think gives a fantastic look. Just knocking things over again. And I love the way you really do get fluttery extended lashes, and it's not clumpy. It's one of my favorites. So that's definitely one I am going to repurchase actually when that one runs out. And then for brows, I use the SUQQU Brow Gel in Sand, which is a go-to for me. Then we moved on to lips. And we took a look at the Makeup by Mario lip liner in Pink Peony. This is the Dior Rouge Forever lipstick in Rose Blues. This is Rose Blues in the velvet of the Rouge Dior, which is a little bit warmer. So I do prefer the Rouge Forever. Just because it is a little bit cooler. And then we topped it with the new lip butter in Glazed Lavender, which gives it just a slightly different look, brings it up. You can see, when you move, you either see a little bit more pink or you see a little bit more blue with the Glazed Lavender. So pairing it on top, I think just gives it a little bit of a fresher look for summer. And while we were using the products today, we did take another look at the 5-sided brushes from Fude Bobo. These are the Kyoto by Yoshiki 5-sided large and small face brushes. And I did review those in my previous video, so I will leave that linked. And today we wanted to take another look with using these with some cream products, and they perform beautifully, like so nicely, that I'm now really considering buying another one to use just for that purpose. But yeah, they're really beautiful brushes. So I hope this has been helpful. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you very soon. Have a wonderful day.